morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the first meeting of the Architectural Review Board for 2016. We'll start with a roll call, please.
Chair Guiger.
Here.
Vice Chair Liu. Here. Board Member Kim.
Here.
Board Member Firth. Here. Board Member Balte.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, start with, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this board on any item that is not on the agenda this morning? Seeing none, we'll close that, and we'll, as far as any agenda changes, additions, that sort of thing, anything? Okay, then why don't we do the approval of the minutes? We've got two sets of minutes. We have December 3rd and December 17th. Are there any comments at anyone? Okay.
Okay, so on the minutes for December 3rd, item number 1, 261 Hamilton. So under the motion, it says, the board recommends to recommend blade signs to be reclassified as wall signs. And we were actually, I think we were saying that, but I think we were also asking them to relocate some of the signs underneath the balcony, and that's part of our code, that the projecting signs have to be underneath some sort of cornice or roof.
Anything else? How about the, do you want to do them separately or do them together at, why don't we do them separately? Okay. Okay, can I get a motion for the December 3rd?
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes for December 3rd as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Then how about the 17th?
I move to approve.
A second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, takes care of those. And we'll start with the first item on the agenda, which is 4175 Manuela Avenue. Request by Kevin Davies on behalf of Congregation Kol Emeth for architectural review of a proposal to demolish an existing synagogue facility consisting of 4 one-story buildings totaling approximately 11,691 square feet and construct a new synagogue facility of 23,555 square feet in size, including 5,487 square feet double counted as second floor equivalency. The new facility would include 2 buildings and associated site improvements. The facility would be served by surface parking and a below-grade parking garage. The project includes an application for major architectural review, a variance to exceed the allowable floor area by 4,942.7 square feet on account of the second floor equivalency, a variance to locate the ramp to the below-grade parking grade in the 30-foot special setback along Manuela Avenue, and a conditional use permit for the religious facility in the single-family residential district. Environmental assessment, categorically exempt from California Environmental Quality Act under Class 15332, infill development projects, zoning district R1. Okay, so why don't we start off with, first of all, I've got various cards here of people that want to talk. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Thank you. All right, why don't we start with staff's presentation?
Good morning. My name is Ranu Agarwal, and I'm the project planner for this project. So first, to give you a little bit of an overview of what this project entails. This is a facility to be built on a 1.37 acres project site, which is a triangular lot. It'll include 2 buildings. We could identify them as the main sanctuary building and administrative building. The total floor area, as was said, is 23,555 square feet, which includes the second floor equivalency of 5,487 square feet. The project provides parking spaces for 121 cars, 12 of which are surface parking spaces, 109 below grade garage spaces, and also for 20 bicycle spaces, which are 16 short-term and 4 long-term spaces. The short-term spaces are provided on the surface, and the long-term spaces are provided near the elevator in the below-grade parking garage. This is the site plan and the schematic plan or the floor plans for the facility. So it is bounded by Manuela Avenue to the west. To the northeast is Foothill Expressway, and there are residential areas to the south of the property and across the site. As I said, it is a two-story facility, two-building facility. As far as project design is concerned, the buildings are arranged in an L-shaped configuration with the vehicular parking, circulation, the surface vehicular circulation provided to the rear so that it is away from Manuela Avenue. And the ramp to the below-grade parking garage is provided at the northern extremity of the site. It will maintain sight lines and is on the northern side to keep traffic away from the residential areas to the south, and also to accommodate the programmatic needs of the client or the applicant. The below-grade parking garage is set back now from the property line about 13 feet. That is to retain the olive trees along the street. The project also retains redwood trees, which are between the surface parking entrance and the ramp to the garage. From the adjacent neighbor to the south, the project design provides an 11-foot, 7-inch setback to provide buffer to the residential property. The trees along the county roadway, which is Foothill Expressway, there are oak trees, some protected oak trees. The parking lot is designed to retain them, and the project arborist provided a report on the trees, which was reviewed and approved by the city arborist. So, and they'll work together to maintain and preserve these trees on the site during construction and after. As far as parking is concerned, the applicants have requested a director's adjustment. For the parking, according to the code, the vehicle parking requirements for religious institutions includes one vehicle space every 4 seats or 4-person capacity. And the applicants provided a parking analysis based on the COLAMIT program, which is where all facilities will not be used at the same time. So the 121 parking spaces for cars is the adjusted number for the parking spaces. In support of this adjustment, the applicants have also provided a draft TDM program, which further proposes a 10% reduction in vehicle trips and consequently reduction in the need for parking spaces. So staff has included conditions of approval number 10, 13, 14, and 15, and number 17 to ensure that the parking provided would be adequate on site for the regular usage of the facility. The key issues that staff has identified with respect to the design of the facility have to do with pedestrian and bicycle circulation. And from staff perspective, there are 3 areas of potential design improvements, and we seek your feedback on what conditions of approval could be incorporated or developed to address these concerns. So one is the width of the walkway in the northeast corner of what is identified as the administrative building. The bicyclist who will be entering the site through the vehicular the surface entry, there is parking provided to the north side of that building. And there might be pedestrians also who would use this circulation area for circulation on the site and to the main building. And it doesn't, it's not likely that that width there is going to be sufficient for the circulation that might occur in that area. The second area of concern for staff was the apron design at the walkway to the main entrance, which is in direct alignment with the main entrance. This provides 10 feet of space between the property line and it stops short of the property line at 10 feet. So the applicants have expressed that this is to prevent it from being used as a loading and unloading zone for vehicles. But with just that kind of separation, it might be that pedestrians coming from the south side particularly would be encouraged to use that, go through the landscaping as it is in direct alignment with the main entrance. The third area is a linkage to Foothill Expressway. There is a transit service, which is about 7 minutes walking distance from the site on the corner of Miranda and Aristodero. And the Public Works Department has included a condition where they've asked the applicant to have a meeting with them to figure out possibilities for extending this sidewalk. And staff just wanted to emphasize that that was important because part of the draft TDM is to promote or educate the congregants about transit use, and this would facilitate pedestrian circulation from a transit facility to the site. So staff recommends that, ARB recommend that the Director of Planning and Community Environment approve this project based on the conditions of approval and the architectural review findings. Of course, we seek your input on areas that were identified and anything else that you might see fit.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes draft presentation.
Okay, if we can hear from the applicant now. You know the drill, you've got 10 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Davies. I'm the project director from Hawley Peterson Snyder Architects. And
Can you speak into the microphone a little bit
sure,
more?
sure. Thank you. My name is Kevin Davies. I'm the project director with Hawley Peterson Snyder Architects, and I'll be facilitating the presentation this morning. And when we get into a Q&A, if there's any questions from the board members, I may call up some of my colleagues that may be able to answer the questions a little bit better on my behalf. But our goal today is to seek your approval and recommendation to the director to approve the project. But before we get into our presentation, I do want to talk about some of the things we've done over the past year. We met with the Architectural Review Board in December of 2014, so about 13 months ago, for a preliminary review. And we took your advice and your comments from that meeting and set out to better our project. And so some of the things that we've done over the past 13 months or so is we've reached out to the neighbors. We had additional neighborhood outreach meetings to show them what the development is and get their feedback and listen to their concerns about the project to try to make improvements. Especially we reached out to the neighbor to the south of the property. There's one neighbor that shares a common property line on the south, Mr. Paul Johnston. And we worked with him closely because we knew that our project would have potentially an impact to his site. And so we wanted to work with him and make sure that he was happy with our development. We also took the board's advice and worked closely with Dave Doctor. We met with Dave a couple of times out on the site. We walked and looked at the existing landscaping. We also met here at the city to talk about concerns of future sidewalks and what the impact of the below-grade garage would be. And so we actually manipulated the shape of our below-grade garage in order to preserve the existing tree root ball. And so we do have some ins and outs along the foothill corridor side. We also initially submitted back to the Architectural Review Board formally in April. And since then, we've been working with the city planners to develop things such as a noise study, a historical resources survey, and as Ranu had mentioned, a draft version of the traffic demand management program. So as not to take up too much more time, I do want to get to the design part of our project, and HPS has been working alongside Field Architecture for the design of the project. And so I'd like to introduce Stan Field to actually go through our presentation. So we just hit that button. Okay, fine.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. We certainly have been very patient in getting here, but we feel that the time has been well spent working with Ranu and Jody and the city and all the departments, and we feel that the project has actually got better as a result of that. Thank you. So I'd really like to talk about the concept that we are putting forward. Here we start with the existing situation, and you can see the parking on the right, the facility that exists on the left, Manuela at the bottom, and Foothill Expressway, all within this triangular site. This is a bird's eye view that shows the neighborhood context with the building superimposed. One of the major elements that we feel was very important to the community was the previous scheme, you know, the sanctuary and the ark, which is really the essence of the synagogue design, was facing north. And I don't know if you know this, but most synagogues attempt to face east. And we've managed to correct that here, and as a result, that is why there's this east-west orientation. It also works much better from a point of view of heat gain, orientation, and sun. So that is the new orientation we've succeeded in producing. Also, as Kevin mentioned, the parking is all out of the way now, and from this plan you can see that the main new element that we've created is this 30-foot wide garden all along the face of Manuela. So that will be the front of the new complex. And all access, both pedestrian and vehicular, will be accessed through this garden. So the narrative that formed the basis of the design concept began to unfold through listening deeply to the collective voice of this community. I do want to say that it's not easy getting a collective voice from a community, as there are many, many voices involved, but we do feel that we managed to coalesce that and create one image of who this community is, and to begin to produce an architecture that reflected that. I began to sketch and give form to a tradition that goes back thousands of years. And this was one of the early sketches where the prayer shawl really became one of the sort of primary image that expressed that tradition. And here, just wanted to include something that we feel is significant. What it really is what you see on the top and on the right top is the old tabernacle that was used by the Israelites as they went through the desert. And what I've done here is taken the same proportions of a 2-to-1 ratio, which is what the original tabernacle was, and we are doing the same proportion on our new building. And it really constitutes the sanctuary and the outer courtyard. So the big idea, I wanted to imbue the Kolemet design and layout with a spirit of humility and purpose. And that, in a sense, is what also led to the idea of looking at the tabernacle as an inspiration, because it was a humble structure, and this is the same as this community. Now this is the entry. This shows you the garden and the lattice that really forms a backdrop to the garden, and that will be the front of the structure. Here is the interior of the sanctuary. It's an early sketch, and one of the other main features is the canopy that is this draped structure within the sanctuary. And it'll all be made of wood, in the same sort of vein that the lattice of the front is made. Here you see an image of the sanctuary looking east towards the ark. This is looking the other direction from inside the sanctuary across the courtyard to the multi-purpose hall. This is looking into the multi-purpose hall from the courtyard. And this is looking the other direction, back towards the east from the multipurpose across the courtyard into the sanctuary. I like the idea of the transparency and the interconnectedness of the spaces, because the idea of secluding spaces somehow makes it inaccessible. And I just like the idea of the porosity that it gave the whole entire scheme. Because I'm seeing this project more as an environment, and it's an interconnected environment, even where the outdoor courts begin to become connected or become connectors of the various other spaces. This is just a fabric that we were reflecting on, which is a traditional prayer shawl, and what happens when that begins to become at a building scale. And this was actually a tapestry that I saw. It was done by an African artist, and it was made out of little small elements, actually tops of wine bottles. And it's really amazing. I mean, and what he managed to do here was just so beautiful. And it just inspired me to say, what if we took small elements like wood and begin to combine them and create this fabric that could become the facade of this structure. And here are some studies of what that fabric begins to look like. This is not a rendering, but a screenshot of the computer model from two different directions. But what I've got up on behind Peter there are some of the woods that we want to use that actually constitute this lattice, we call it. And the woods will be, it'll form this sort of tapestry. And many species, the whole idea being that they will be offcuts and reclaimed woods. They're actually what's called shorts. They're about 30 inches long, and we want to repurpose them. And together they will make up this collective tapestry. But we want to use cedars, western red, Alaskan, yellow cedars, redwoods, cypress, teak, doug fir, a lot of North American woods, but also some remote woods as well. This is a board showing the material language. On the top left, you see a beautiful concrete finish. On the right top is cementitious plaster finish, integral color. And then on the bottom right are the woods. And the idea of the wood is that, it's the subtle fluctuations in the final look can be achieved by varying the color, texture of the wood, and by burning, distressing, to ensure tone variation is maintained after weathering, because this is going to be up for a long time, and obviously wood matures, but that is part of the character that we want to give it. And that is the entry, a little closer up. And just as the tabernacle, if one wants to look at it that way, was a net zero building 3,500 years ago, so too do we want to try to achieve a net zero building here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. That actually concludes our presentation. And again, we are seeking your approval to the director for the project.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got various speakers, so why don't I just, I'll call your name and then also the person right behind you, so if you can get ready. We'll start with Paul Johnston, and then followed by Mindy Romanowski.
Thank you. My name is Paul Johnston. I'm here with my wife, Terry. We are let me just first say about 838 Mesa Court. I want to talk specifically about the second floor equivalency FAR variance that is being asked for. This was something that was initially of great concern to us because we are the property by far most impacted by that. Our property shares a 180-foot border with the congregation to the south. So as you look at the drawing there, that's to the right. And obviously that height would be something that would be of concern to us. What I am pleased to say is that through a series of meetings with both representatives from the architectural firms and from leadership from the synagogue, we have been able to reach agreement on some measures that really reduce the impact of that. That included height issues. It included making sure the parking garage didn't go underneath the area where trees would be planted so trees could grow properly, included a wider setback, included some issues involving a green wall, some issues with regard to light spill, noise spill, and so forth. And through a series of meetings, we were able to kind of reach agreement on some things that would address our concerns with regard to that. I'm very also pleased to see that I summarized that in a letter to Renew, and those issues have been agreed to by the congregation and are now represent conditions for the approval. And from that standpoint, I'm pleased that everybody was able to work together to address the issues or the concerns we have. And so as a result of that, we do not have an objection to the variance with regard to floor area ratio. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The one thing I did forget to mention is that we're limiting everyone's talk to 3 minutes. So why don't we continue with Mindy Romanowski and then Yvonne Boxerman.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Mindy Romanowski. I'm a land use attorney working with the congregation on these entitlements for rebuilding their congregation. As you may or may not know, the congregation has been part of this community for over 50 years, long before many of the homes were actually there. And the building at this point has really outlived its useful life, as you'll hear from some of the later speakers, I imagine. And I want to highlight that Colomet is really rebuilding out of necessity, both for energy efficiency and a number of other reasons. They're not rebuilding because they seek to enlarge their congregation in any major way. In fact, the traffic analysis shows that based upon what we're proposing for the new building and the intended programming, that there are no additional traffic impacts that will be brought to the neighborhood. And further, despite the fact that there'll be no added traffic impacts, we are really committed to reducing the impacts even more than what exists today, which is the reason for putting an underground parking garage in, getting the cars off the road as soon as possible. People won't hear slamming doors. The cars will not be driving, they'll turn off the road right at the first apex of the triangle right there, as you can see on the furthest right map on the wall over there. And so that really the impact will be felt less in the neighborhood than as currently exists. The decision before you today is involving both major architectural review approval and 2 minor variances. And I want to speak very briefly on those variances. You do have correspondence from me about the variances. The first one is regarding what Mr. Johnson just spoke about. It's the height. We are asking for an additional 4 feet at the top corner where the sanctuary will be, as our architect so eloquently spoke about. For religious reasons, the building is really oriented towards the east, as is towards Jerusalem, which is very important in the Jewish faith. And the ceiling is vaulted for worship purposes. Due to the size of this parcel, the triangular nature of it, and the fact that we're trying to really work within our confines, the footprint remains the same. The fact that there's a little bit of extra square footage because your code counts it twice when you go above 17 feet doesn't increase the footprint, as you well know, and I just want to emphasize the fact that We believe that the findings are there to support the location of the sanctuary, the vaulted ceiling, and that it will not adversely impact the neighborhood because of where it is situated, further towards Foothill Expressway and at the very back of the site. The second variance is related to the underground parking ramp. As you heard, we are driving the cars straight at that left corner, getting them into the garage and down off Manuela. As was analyzed by our traffic consultant, they did recommend this entrance.
Finish it up.
Oh, thank you. They did recommend this entrance as the safest, most efficient form of circulation to get into that garage. So in closing, I want to express my gratitude to the staff for working so closely with us and to the neighbors for coming to meetings and giving us their feedback. And at this point, we do respectfully ask for your approval this morning, and we're happy to take questions. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so next up, Yvonne Boxerman, and then followed by Peter Wexler.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne Boxerman, a longtime Palo Alto resident, past president of Congregation Colomet, and its executive director from May 2008 until formal retirement last month. During my tenure as director, I was privileged to work with a dedicated staff and committed, loyal congregants. This, despite an aging, inadequate facility that had long ago outlived its usefulness, both in infrastructure and usable spaces. Why don't we have a more environmentally friendly building, congregants frequently asked. The answer was either to upgrade and retrofit a 50-plus-year-old building to current standards, electrical, heating and cooling, etc., which would be both costly and ineffective, or to build a new building. Rather than making perpetual fixes to an old structure, the congregation overwhelmingly voted to fund and build a brand new building. Once we hired the architects, we began to hold congregational and neighborhood meetings to make sure the carefully thought out plans we had developed were also the vision of others. Over a 9-month period, we advertised and held multiple meetings to which approximately 25 neighborhood households attended. They viewed the detailed plans and we answered their questions. A large majority of those who attended seemed satisfied that the project we were proposing was much more suitable to the neighborhood than our current building. One close neighbor used the word beautiful to describe the design, and another commented that he really appreciated the underground parking lot. Not one person who attended said they were opposed to a new building for Colomet. In addition, over the past year and a half, we regularly use a shuttle service to Aldersgate Church, a few blocks up the street, to accommodate overflow parking. In the words of Pastor Roger Morimoto, who regrets he could not be here this morning, quote, Aldersgate UMC and Colomet have had a great working relationship in sharing the parking spaces at the two facilities. It is a formal agreement and it works well. Aldersgate has no intention to change this understanding in the near or long-term future, end of quote. Each week we place large signs at the entrance to our parking lot requesting that people not park on the neighborhood streets and instead use Aldersgate for overflow parking. And we regularly notify neighbors with flyers hand-delivered to their doorsteps when we expect a larger than usual attendance. It is our fervent hope that the members of this board vote in favor of our project today so that Colomet can finally build its long-awaited for and well-deserved new building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Peter Wexler and then followed by Rabbi David Booth.
My name is Peter Wexler. My family and I are Palo Alto residents, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board. So we've been members for 12 years. I'm a past president and have served on the board of Colomet for about 6 years, and it's from this perspective that I would like to address you. I can certainly attest to the fact that the building has been well used, and as a matter of fact, this project began over 8 years ago when it became apparent that the building was nearing the end of its useful life. and I say that in a very kind and respectful way to the building. Our synagogue, our synagogue has been at the location for over 50 years. Members live primarily in the Palo Alto area and the adjacent towns, and we have many members who walk to the synagogue on Saturdays and during holidays as well. The congregation has had some growth, but it's remained relatively stable the last few years. In some cases, 3 generations of families have been part of our community. We celebrate their births and we mourn their passing. The relationship with respect to the neighborhood and the neighbors is always an important issue for the board. At the start of each fiscal year in July, when we bring our new board in with the old board members, we have some activities to ensure there's continuity and that the members understand that we live together with our neighbors in a residential neighborhood. Not just with respect to minimizing the parking impact, but we strive to be an asset to the community, both from a programmatic and hopefully as we move forward from an aesthetic standpoint. And as part of the effort to envision a new home for the congregation, early on, the board really encouraged the staff to have outreach to the neighborhood, and hence Yvonne talked about all the meetings that we've had with our neighbors. Our past and current executive directors are present during business hours and also during many of the functions, and they're frequently the point of contact for any issues affecting neighbors. Neighbors know that they always have somebody they can physically go and see when they have an issue, whether it's a neighbor giving us a heads up that we need to be pruning a tree in front a certain way, or a concern about the parking. We really attempt to make the neighbors feel that we're a responsible neighbor. In addition to the regular Jewish worship that goes on at this location, our members support our community through programs like monthly sandwich making for local pantries, delivering soup to the veterans at the VA, and efforts to highlight human trafficking in Santa Clara County. So I appreciate the opportunity to encourage this board to approve this project, which will allow us to continue to be a benefit for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have Rabbi David Booth, followed by Adrian Fine.
So I also want to express my appreciation for the chance to speak with you and for your time this morning and throughout this process, and also to the professionals who've been giving us so much time and effort and work. I want to highlight the role that Colomet plays in the Jewish community in Palo Alto, but also in the wider community as well. And I was thinking a little bit just about this past weekend. We actually had a pulpit exchange with University AME Zion Church in Midtown, a historically black church, about 93 years in Palo Alto, and took the opportunity to look at some of the racial issues that we've been reading about and experiencing locally and nationally and try and bring our communities together. At the end of that weekend on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, there was a group of people who assembled at Colomet to pack up supplies to go to the island of Lesvos in Greece to help the refugee efforts there, as thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are beginning to arrive, as you know, flowing into Europe. And so we are really a community that wants to reach out beyond our own immediate Jewish concern and be aware of and help and support in so many different ways the world around us. We do work for the environment, for homeless, for interfaith. Peter highlighted studies and work that we try to do to end human trafficking in our area, to really recognize that we hold a key place in this community as a spiritual, moral center. Peter also alluded a little bit to our demographics, and I want to touch on that as well. The congregation was built, the last part of building happened in the mid-'80s rather, and since that point, in the '90s, the congregation went through a real growth stage as Palo Alto grew. But since 2001, the congregation's been in a relatively narrow band of what its membership looks like. So we don't anticipate significant growth or growth really as a result of this new building, but rather building the home that our congregation as it currently is needs. When we tried to do that collection for Syrian refugees to try to bring, hiking boots, socks, gloves, and so forth, we realized we didn't actually have anywhere to store the supplies that we wanted to be a collecting place for. And so we had to put them in a bunch of different places, and actually in our social hall, very publicly and open, while we were getting ready for those. And we couldn't hold them for a long period of time, which we'd wanted to do because some other people are traveling in March, and so we had to find another place to store. When our congregants come to us for alternative services, we often find ourselves having to say no because on Saturday morning there's simply no space whatsoever. The facility that we're trying to build is to be the right size for a community and to fit the neighborhood. We want to take what is a relative eyesore in the community and turn it into something that is modest, has a quality of humility about it, and really is appropriate for the neighborhood as it's grown and developed with a variety of mixed kinds of homes, some quite large and magnificent, and I think a few that are significantly taller than the facility that we're proposing. Moses talks about at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, makes a sort of curious phrase where he talks about addressing everybody who's standing here today and also all the people not standing here. So there's a recognition that something's looking towards the future, that he's imagining a community that's in front of him, but also future communities. And I think at this moment, as we're standing and looking at the future of Palo Alto, we're talking about helping to strengthen an institution that will continue to be one of the key moral and spiritual centers of Palo Alto, hopefully for decades to come. So thank you again so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have Adrian Fine?
Good morning, and thank you for the time and opportunity to speak. My name is Adrian Fine. I'm chair of the Planning Commission, but I'm here today as a fairly new congregant at Colomet with my partner. I'm coming here to urge you today to recommend approval of this project to the director. I think it has a lot of positive qualities. There are a few issues, but I think they've been worked out by staff and by the process the congregation has taken with the architects and the neighborhood. So just to go through a couple of those issues. First of all, this project is in line with the comp plan, as staff has called out, and there are a lot of positives to it, including a below-grade parking garage, a number of sustainable and natural elements, which help move it into the current century. It's also a community centerpiece for Palo Alto. A lot of folks use it as a place to go together, as others have mentioned, for social programs and outreach efforts. That's a really important thing. I don't think Palo Alto has enough community centers anymore. There are a few issues with the project, which I think staff has highlighted really well, including the variance for the ramp, which I think is justified because of the awkward parcel, the need for the religious orientation, and also the turnoff will be earlier, so there's less impact on the neighborhoods. There's also the variance for the second floor equivalency. That seems a bit of an oddity in our code that double counts that. And as one of the neighbors said, there had been talks about this, and I think in the conditions of approval, a mezzanine is actually forbidden for that area, so hopefully that solves the issue in your eyes. There are over 160 conditions of approval, including a TDM plan, transportation demand management with annual reports. And if you go there on any Saturday, you'll see there are congregants out ushering folks, trying to remind people not to park in the neighborhood, and using Aldergate when possible. So just want to thank you for your time today, and I'd encourage you to recommend approval of this project to the director. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion and bring it back to the board. Are there any questions anyone has? Okay, Wynn, go ahead.
I have a question for staff. So the traffic study mentioned that there's a change in the program for the project, which is that the school, I think it says that there's an existing school on the site that's not going to be kept on the site, it's going to be moved off site, and that's reducing the traffic. Is that correct? And then
that is more pertaining to the noise, and the program outlines exactly what spaces would be used at the same time and what would be not used concurrently with their peak users. But the school itself was more related to the noise impacts, and the closure of the school would affect noise going down.
okay, and then do you have date? Is there data about the number of people? I mean, I would expect it to generate a fair bit of traffic, actually.
The number for the traffic?
For the school, if there's for the school and the number of people attending the school.
There are classrooms associated with the facility in the new facility, but the school that was an arts and crafts school for children, that is closing down. I don't believe the previous conditional use permits, that facility was part of those permits. So these are classrooms which are associated with the sanctuary use and the use of the facility for worship.
Okay, I have one more question. So there is, so I was walking around the site, and there, on Manuela there are no parking signs.
Yes.
On a fair bit of it. On some parts it's one side of the street, and others it's both sides of the street when you get closer to a restaurant. And I was wondering what the how that came about. Was that based on complaints of the neighbors, or is that really because of the blind curve and just for traffic safety? I was wondering if you know anything about the history about that.
I don't have knowledge of why the no parking signs were put there. I believe that neighbors don't want parking on that stretch of the street, but which have the blind curve signs, etc. They are transportation related, transportation department.
Okay, thank you.
Wynn?
Thank you. It was a pleasure to hear the presentation. Reminds me why I always try to join a congregation after they've completed their major building program. Whenever I move. I had some questions for staff. On page 4, we talk about some significant trees being kept in place, but that the ramp's likely to have a significant impact on one of the trees. Does that mean dying by inches or majorly trimmed? What does that mean?
There is a tree in the county right away, oak tree. Is that the one you're talking about?
It's the one you're talking about. It says there are 2 protected redwoods out in the property and a grouping of 4 on the island between the garage ramp and the surface access to the site.
Yes.
These trees are proposed to be retained, though the tree closest to the garage ramp may be significantly impacted. I mean, does that mean it's actually going to be killed or likely to be killed?
There are protection measures which were spelled out in the arborist report that the city arborist reviewed and has approved. So there would be protection measures to see that tree has minimal impacts, or the impacts are minimized to that tree.
What's concerning me is that this is said to be a redwood, so we can often trim back oaks, but I'm not really familiar with significantly impacting a redwood and having it survive. So when the staff report, is it an oak tree? That would be better. It says protected.
Redwood is not being trimmed.
It's
the
an
oak along the.
Well, you can see my confusion as to whether it's a significant impact or minimal impact. A more perhaps useful question. When I round everything out and I eliminate the double counting of square footage, it seems to me that we're going from about 12,000 square feet of building to about 18,000. And I wonder if you could explain to me what the new spaces consist of, what their programmatic use is.
Is that a question for me?
Yes, or whoever would like to answer it. My math may be wrong, but if I round off to the nearest 1,000, this is what I get.
Would you like us to address what the circulation space is in each of the individual?
Just what's new is what I'm asking you. If you're increasing your space by 50%, and I was just wondering what those new spaces consist of.
Well, interestingly, the sanctuary itself, which, as Stan Field had mentioned, which is located up here, we are currently, it's sized for about 350 seats. The current sanctuary is around 300 seats, and so it's not significantly more. What we are adding are a couple of more classrooms, which is for the religious school. And I do want to clarify some of the questions earlier about the school. There is no school planned for this project. The only classrooms are for the religious school. So there'll be the children that will be on site. This area down here is the multi-purpose space. And so this is a little bit larger than their current multi-purpose space, and so that has grown. And it's really in proportion with the sanctuary. And so as the folks leave the sanctuary on a typical Saturday, they would then gather down in the multi-purpose space. And so that has grown a little bit. There's also a small sanctuary over here, which would be used during events that wouldn't warrant such a large gathering at the main sanctuary. And there are things that go on during the week, and if you need more detail, I certainly could bring up one of the congregants to talk about what's going on. But during the week, there are prayer services that take place that would warrant for a smaller situation. And so some of those space really is why the building has grown about 40 to 50%, as you've noticed.
Thank you. And then this question is probably more for staff. As you know, I am troubled by variance findings unless they've clearly explained to me why there's a characteristic of the parcel that makes them necessary. So could you take me through why the ramp needs to be in that 30-foot setback? And just as a setting, when I read the purpose section for the R1 district, it talks about it's supposed to be full of nature and open areas and maximum privacy and opportunities for children's play. And it's very clear that our code doesn't anticipate a monoculture of nothing but houses, that places of religious assembly are one of the desired and permitted uses in these neighborhoods, and I certainly think they enrich them. But we also ban underground parking in connection with single-family uses. It never occurred to us until the early 2000s that you would need to ban it. but when it became a local phenomenon, we stopped it. And I think partly it's because there's this sense that nothing says you're not in a single-family neighborhood like underground parking visible from the street. So first of all, could you explain why the circulation, good circulation here that does all the things this accomplishes, such as having the loading zone away from the street, requires this intrusion? And what will it look like from the street? I'm particularly thinking about people walking along that sidewalk or people driving into the neighborhood. It's a very pretty neighborhood. I understand that the congregants may find the building irritatingly falling apart, but it does have this, pleasant, low-key aspect at present, and that's something that I think is admirable.
So thank you. Regarding the underground parking, you are correct that underground parking for single-family uses is prohibited. However, this is a religious assembly use, and therefore underground parking is allowed. We did have to, look through the rest of the code, as you see in the staff report, for parameters for that underground parking, and so we've sort of worked with the applicant and worked through those details to ensure that we have sufficient perimeter landscaping that it will survive, so that it will add to the beauty of the site. Once you have the underground parking, you obviously need the ramp that goes to that. That's one of the quirks in our code, that while a standard driveway and surface parking would be allowed, the ramp itself and kind of the retaining wall structures that go with that are considered structures and then need this variance in order to be in the special setback. And we did look through, with our transportation divisions about the location of this ramp, and this was thought to be the best location to take cars, off of the street as quickly as possible.
So the feeling is if you pulled it back to conform with the code, what would happen that we don't want to have happen?
Turn it on. The attempt also was to try to save the trees which are along the county right-of-way, and if the ramp were to go further into the site, there was greater impact to those trees.
Excellent, thank you. And what about the visual impact? What does this look like as I walk by?
I think that's probably best answered by the architect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stan, would you like to talk about this? But I'll just briefly mention. So the ramp, if you can look at my cursor up on the screen, the ramp starts right here. And this large island right here is landscaping, which consists of mostly of the redwood trees that were discussed. And then the oak tree that was discussed is along the foothill setback. And so as you view in this direction and all along Manuela, you actually do not see the underground parking garage. It actually does have landscaping along that front. And Stan, is there something else you might want to?
Just to reinforce that, by being at that apex, if one continued that triangle, you'll find that there's another piece of open space that doesn't, I think it's public open space, and there are a lot of trees there. So as one comes up Manuela, all of that is screened. So you don't actually see that ramp at all. And there's a wonderful cluster just to the right of it of mature redwoods. And we really are preserving those and, in fact, even invigorating them. And as we heard before, we're actually adding a large number of redwoods on the southern property line to reinforce the existing mature redwoods.
Thank you. And will there be,
Sure.
will it just be an open, unsecured access to the garage?
No, the plan is at the bottom of the ramp that there will be a roll-down gate, so it will not be accessed in the evenings or whenever the congregation is
Thank
not
you.
using the facility.
Those are my questions. Appreciate your answers.
I do have the landscape architect here if you do have some questions about the trees.
I have my answers. Thank you.
Great.
Nice job. Anyone else?
A quick question for staff, if I could. Reading the report, it seems to say that if all uses were considered at the same time, you'd need 187 parking spaces, but you've managed to justify 121 through uses being at different times. Can you speak to that a little bit more, how you came up with that number? It seems like a pretty large reduction.
The spaces that are going to be used at the same time are the sanctuary, some of the classrooms, and the storage and kitchen areas. Based on the required parking per code, the figure that came up was 121 spaces. And there is a condition in place which disallows the simultaneous use of the peak usage parking and the non-peak parking. So the non-peak parking is considered parked in the amount that is proposed for the peak simultaneous uses.
Okay, so then if I understand it right, you have seating for 484 people, which equates to 121 parking spaces. So that's assuming then that no other spaces in the facility whatsoever are being used at the same time that the seating is being used in a service.
The maximum attendance is capped at 484 persons.
480.
So that is including the use of the other ancillary facilities that would go with the.
So the sanctuary itself will not fit 484 people?
It's seating for 350 in the main sanctuary and I believe 75 in the small sanctuary.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Regarding this, counting the area twice in areas above 17 feet, it's my understanding that this is because this is a R1 zone, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So where is that 17-foot calculated from? Is that from finished floor to finished ceiling?
Finished floor to the top of the roof, yes.
To top of the roof?
Yes.
Top of exterior roof, okay. So actually, from the drawings, it appears that the building is only maybe a foot above the 17 feet to the top of the roof. I think to the top of the parapet, it's 21 feet, and that's actually from, that's from the finished floor, so okay. And then the variance was for part of the ramp along the 30-foot special setback.
Yes.
But it also appears that the ramp is also within the rear setback, and I was wondering why that part wasn't counted in the variance.
Because the rear setback is abutting the Foothill Expressway, and there weren't the kind of impacts that would happen in the special setback. And as Jody said, that is something that is kind of standard where we would have ramps in the special setback, but it's just something that probably needs to be fixed in the code.
Okay, that doesn't make sense to me, but I can accept that, I guess.
I think, yeah, projections are allowed in the rear setback versus, special setback.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll take that and further refine that in this final conditions of approval.
Okay. I think those were my questions for staff. Thank you.
Okay, so I tell you what, Alex, why don't you start? Seeing as though you were here the last time.
Yes, thank you. So this is a really interesting project. We've got a great design team on board. Generally I can support the project. I think I do have like a number of questions about the details in the design that I'm thinking that they should come back to the board. The staff asked about the wood lattice and there's a structural sheet showing the supports for all of that. And I think I get the idea. I looked at that pretty carefully. I would feel still more comfortable for that to come back once the design team has gotten farther along with the design. Just conceptually it looks okay, but you do have like a long span lintel over the main, what do you call it, the main axes. Also in designs like this that I've seen in town, like the spacing, the amount of space that you have between boards is very important. wood changes over time. Some species of wood expand lengthwise and some don't. So there's a whole bunch of things there that, that I think should come back. I think in some of the descriptions there was some mention about a stain or something on the wood, and I don't really see anything here. So I think like all of that kind of stuff should come back just to be safe. I mean, I think I trust the designers to do something tasteful. Also, I think the garage ramp, considering that's like a main entrance for most of the congregation, and it's fairly visible from Manuela, I think that the design for that, it's possible for that to be enhanced. At the moment, you're not showing any lighting whatsoever for that, which seems like an oversight, at least at the moment. But really, if it's concrete, what is the color and the texture of the concrete? If there are any plants or if there are any vines growing over the side of it to soften any exposed concrete walls, I think that that could all come back. If there's signage or entry markers or anything to that, it seems to me if that's the main entry point, and you're going to see that before you get to the main part of the building, I think then the design of that is very important. Okay, so I think the community, I didn't want to talk about some of the community's concerns. It seems like we received a lot of emails, mostly about parking and also I think massing and also future growth. So I think regarding the parking, I did want to mention that I did do sort of an aerial survey of all the other churches in Palo Alto and just try to get a sense for how much parking they provide on their site. And it really varies in Palo Alto. From 0 to 80 is pretty common. I think maybe there are some that have like over 100. But just based on that, I was fairly comfortable with what's being proposed here today. It's a huge expense to go underground, and I think some of the neighbors were asking for 2 levels of underground parking, and it's crazy expensive for something that's used for the amount of time that it's being used. It's crazy, and I think I do understand the impacts of the parking in the neighborhood, but I think that happens everywhere. There are people parked in front of my house like every day except for maybe Saturdays. That I think some of that is to be expected. I did look at all of the parking studies, and for all of that, it looks fairly comfortable to me. It seems like the things that would impact the people the most are when you have the event days that it outlines that if there are like 400 or more people on site, and I think the conditional use permit restricts that to 8 times a year, if I think I read that correctly. Yeah.
So I did just want to clarify, and maybe we can have the applicant talk about this, because there were some sort of last-minute emails in the conditions of approval. It was our understanding that there were going to be 6 events a year, okay. And the congregation has sort of, thought that thoroughly through at this point and thinking that there might be 8 events. And so it would be good to have some discussion about that.
And so then I think my next question, this has come up before, so with a conditional use permit, like how long does that last? And if there are issues, how do they, because we've had issues before where the conditional use, of a property that's governed by a conditional use permit, but they go over time, things happen and things change. And so what recourse would the neighbors have if the congregation enlarged? Like how could they get the conditional use permit to address their concerns?
Thank you, because I think that staff's tried to be very thoughtful related to that. By putting in a maximum capacity for the facility, by putting in conditions related to these special events, limiting the number of special events, making sure that there's advance notice to the neighbors, making sure that the congregation provides the director with advance notice, lets us know where, because they will need additional parking for these special events. And so staff will be working with them ahead of time to make sure where that off-site parking is going to be. Is it far enough away that it needs to have a shuttle? Things of that nature. And we haven't worked out all of those details, but the conditions are there, and the details are to be worked out in the TDM program that must be completed prior to building permits.
Say, for example, if something happened at Aldersgate and they weren't able to get that parking, then the conditional use permit process would, or the TDM program would, what would happen? How would that come through on the TDM?
Yes. So the details would be in the TDM, but I can imagine in the TDM it would say, based upon for special events that it would need to have, so many number of additional spaces, and those additional spaces must be procured, prior to the event actually happening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then on the massing, I think really on the second floor equivalence space, I did want to mention that, the purpose of that was to discourage the McMansions and the two-story high entrances and two-story columns. And so it seems like the impact of this particular project isn't really that much different than currently, like the current design. So I was looking at like the facade length facing Manuela. It doesn't, the lengthwise, it really seems very similar. In terms of setback, the new building is going to be pushed back farther than the current building. So it'll actually decrease the effect of the massing on the street. And that's because of the 30-foot special setback. And it seems to me it would really, the second floor equivalency really has the most negative effect on Mr. Johnson's property, which is the 838 Mesa Court, because it's a long, the taller element is a long element facing his property. But there's a tall fence. There's a lot of the mature oleanders, and there are redwoods, right, new and existing. And so I think that can mitigate it. I think the green screen and the night window shades can help. And also I think as well is the color. Like I think the sort of the gray taupe or whatever you're proposing would minimize any reflected light if it was like a white wall bouncing light into the neighbors and causing glare. So I think that those are all, I think the second floor thing is supportable. Okay, and then on the staff, I think you've mentioned several things on the bike parking and the pedestrian elements, and I think I support all of those elements. When I was at the site yesterday, I saw some students walking by the site in the street, and I was looking at the traffic and the speeds of the traffic going by on Manuela, and I didn't really feel that comfortable about it. So I would support the sidewalks and the pedestrian connection to the main axes. And then with the bike parking, I don't feel quite so strongly as you do. I don't quite understand what you're asking for on the bike parking at grade, but it seems like you're looking for the bike parking to be relocated closer to the administrative building, or?
There is...
it's in the corner now, right, of the roundabout.
The bike parking is to the north of that administrative building, and my concern was the width of the walkway at the corner.
Yeah, so that was what I didn't understand, is that the bike parking is closer to the synagogue, right, in the roundabout?
So when people park and they have to go into the facility, in staff assessment, there wasn't enough space for circulation around the corner of the administrative building. It is just about 3 feet 6 inches, so it didn't seem like it was appropriate for a landscape scale. And also there are some minimum code requirements, and in conversation with building, it's just a 2-inch difference, but if there is it's too tight, then later on it might not be able to get that width there.
Oh, I see.
Right now.
That's just really just for pedestrian circulation? Not for bikes?
Yes, that's
Pedestrians.
that's
Okay,
little
I can
corner
support-
there.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I can support that. It seems like the designers are sort of treating the parking and all the paving and the courtyard all the same, right? I mean, you're trying to make it all look fairly seamless. So it's not like an asphalt parking lot with a
Correct.
separate,
Yeah, no,
separate sidewalk and a separate
Correct.
patio pavers, right?
We're using pavers that would be similar. Well, obviously, some would be for the traffic and some would be for pedestrian.
Right.
And if I could address the bicycle parking just a little bit, if you can see my cursor, there are 2 racks here that would support 4 bicycles for the administration wing, but the majority of the short-term bicycle parking is over here closest to the sanctuary.
Right.
And then down below in the garage, they're
Those.
adjacent to the elevator.
Bit long-term.
Those are the lockers.
Okay, and then I have some additional questions about the just building design. So, I mean, you're showing things that I haven't seen before. So, like, there are some of the classrooms next to the multi-purpose room have like the wood screen, the wood lattice on them, like on the doors.
Along this entrance here?
Yeah,
Yes.
and like how do you do that? I think you're also showing, just on your wall sections, you're showing like traditional stucco on styrofoam. And I was wondering if that you were really just proposing EIFS?
We're not proposing EIFS. What the rigid installation that we're showing is to be in conformance with the energy code, which requires continuous insulation. And so that would be behind a full 7/8 inch cement plaster.
Okay, good. And let's see. I think I've mentioned, I think that's all that I have. Oh, I have a question on the landscaping. So I think this is for Gary. I think along the Mesa Court neighbor, you're proposing like a lot of redwood trees along the side property line. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was wondering what
South property line, yeah.
Yeah, and I was wondering how you envisioned that. I've seen some where like here in Palo Alto, sometimes they're just, I don't know how to call it pollarded, but sometimes they're just, they're done like more like a hedge or like but not left to full height. So I was wondering if you were if the intent is to let the trees grow at their 5 feet a year rate, whatever they do.
I think we want to let them grow to their natural form. I don't think we want the maintenance or the unnatural, look. We'd like to have them tall, and I think it's important to note that, they're not going to grow to the full height of it's not going to be a 100-foot, 200-foot tall redwood tree. In that zone, they're limited by the amount of soil volume that they have available. So we have a 9-foot wide area, which I think naturally kind of restricts the roots and will keep them to a manageable size. But, I would imagine, 30, 40 feet, they're going to slow down in growth quite a lot, and they're going to be more open in form and still provide that screen.
And then on the existing redwood trees near the driveway, proposed driveway, those look like they were in pretty bad shape, probably because of the drought.
Yeah, they're drought stressed. I think that that's 3 or 4 years of, continuous drought has taken its toll. And just to answer that earlier question about the trees there is one redwood tree in the driveway that's coming out, and then which is part of this grove that's here. And the one that was referred to, I think, as maybe having some impacts is because there's some paving, for the driveway apron near that tree. But the driveway doesn't really start cutting down until, this line right here. So we get some distance from this redwood tree. But we're realistic that there may be some impacts there to the roots, with the road base and so on. And so I think that's what the arborist report is referring to. And so we've also planted 4 new redwood trees in this area in a position that allows them to take advantage of that wider soil area.
Okay, and I think my last question, which is for you, which is I think you're showing creeping fig on, I think it's on the fence, on the foothill fence?
Yes, on the wall that's here.
And so I think normally here we don't plant it on the south, like south facing, it's usually on a shaded side. So I was wondering what you were thinking about that, because
Yeah, I think it tolerates full sun, it does, but also this is pretty much of a dappled light, half
Right.
shade condition anyway because of the existing trees and the buildings that are there. So, the roots will be in shade and some of it will get maybe a little bit of full sun, but I think we'll do fine.
Okay. Okay, that's all that I have.
Great, thank you.
Lynn?
Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the earlier discussions. Certainly, the building is as drawn and depicted looks lovely, and it certainly would seem to meet our requirement that it be designed to function well for the congregation, for the users of it. I think staff has finally given me the rationale for the parking encroachment by saying we'd kill trees otherwise. That's always a good reason for a variance. I mean, quite seriously, it's a good reason for a variance. As to the height variance, which is essentially what we're saying here, not additional square footage, it's interesting. If this were not, this brings us right up to the Constitution. If this were not a religious organization, we wouldn't be allowing this. Are we establishing religion on the other flip side of the First Amendment by doing it? I think the fact that we have the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act probably gives us a little more wiggle room than we would have otherwise to say yes. I certainly don't see it have any adverse impact on the neighborhood. I do think it's a rule in the R1 district because of concerns about volumes of buildings, but this is a lot that's so big it wouldn't even be permitted as a new R1 lot. And I think that special circumstance helps make it possible for this not to have an adverse impact. The other property on the southern boundary, as I understand, belongs, in fact, to the congregation, according to the staff report. Yeah, so clearly those closest to it are not going to be adversely impacted, and I can't imagine that the traffic on Foothill will be either. I'm actually more concerned about the people across the street and in the neighborhood who complained about intermittent parking problems and are concerned about safety, and particularly about the location of this driveway. In California, our law is that people are experts on parking in their own neighborhood, so we should take seriously what they say. For safety of design, I'm going to rely on the staff, which says that this is a safe design. We don't have, even in an R1 district, an expectation of not having people use public streets for parking. So I don't think that we're entitled to have no parking on our streets. I do think we're entitled to have some parking available for uses other than the congregations. And fortunately, this is a conditional use permit. So unlike a design review, there's continuing jurisdiction. I think it's quite clear that whether this is a happy situation or not depends much less on the design and the conditional use permit than the choices that the congregation makes. And they haven't indicated to us they hope to make good ones, and there's nothing about the design that would seem to make good neighborhood interactions impossible. I am concerned, we haven't seen, as far as I know, the proposed traffic demand management plan?
We've seen a draft of it.
But we have not, right? We on the board?
Correct, correct.
As one of the things that concerns me in all these projects, meaning non-residential projects, is that as far as I can tell, our code requirements for bicycles assume really low use of bicycles, particularly when you're talking about a place of assembly like this where you have periods of intense use. It's hard to imagine a really effective TDM program unless it involved shuttles or serious carpooling that didn't involve more than the number of bicycles here. And I don't know where additional bicycle parking or bicycle parking that accommodates the extended bikes that people with children use would go. But it meets code, and I can't clearly say there's a problem. Is there any seating along the front of the property, along that very long frontage along Manuela? Could you show me where it is? Or, thank you have your architect up there too.
Gary, actually, can you talk about
The benches, we do have some benches over here, so there is some hardscape in this area, some benches here. There's also some benches along this side over here outside of the multi-purpose area.
Great. I think that's terrific. I think that another part of our trying to encourage pedestrian usage is to have places for pedestrians to stop and sit. So I think that design element's a terrific addition.
And I don't want to change your train of thought, but we do have a sidewalk that fronts our property that goes along here and then meanders through the garden that Stan had talked about. So you could actually traverse from the north end of the property to the south end. And so the neighborhood would be encouraged to actually use the garden and sit on those benches.
So it becomes another social space.
Correct.
Thank you. So aside from the more technical building details about which my colleagues are more expert, I think this looks ready to go.
Peter?
Thank you, Robert. I'm not so sure. I'd like to perhaps start with the two-story variance and maybe focus on addressing it to my colleagues. My understanding of that rule is that the FAR is designed to limit bulk and mass of a building, perceptual bulk and mass. We've decided in all R1 zones that we take that seriously, hence anything too tall gets counted twice. Many structures I've designed in Palo Alto in the R1 zone, we end up reducing overall useful square footage in order to get additional bulk and mass to make the building look the way we feel it needs to be or function as we want it to function. In this case, it's a religious sanctuary. You need a taller space. That makes sense. But why that space should somehow not be considered the same as all the other uses in that same zone, I don't understand. My understanding is that it's allowed to have the variance strictly because it's not residential. If you read the code carefully, R1 zones prohibit even asking for a variance to the FAR in a residential area. It's not even a question. You cannot even ask for the variance. In this case, because it's not a residential use, they can ask for the variance. But to me, that says, let's be extra careful. Let's think about it. When I look at the site planning, the building is much larger than the building it's replacing. And it does look a little bit bigger because of the two-story element in the back. Again, if I were starting out as the architect, I'd be saying we really need to keep the total square footage to within the code, within the FAR. And what they're asking for is about 5,000 square feet more. It's a 25% exception. That's quite a bit. I just keep coming around to thinking that it's a pretty large amount, and the code is rational, what they're asking for. Then I say to myself, okay, so if you're going to consider this as a variance, what do you need? What findings do you need? And my understanding of variance is the critical finding is there has to be something unique and special about the particular property that would grant that variance. All the other reasons Alex gave are quite true, but I think you still don't have on this particular lot anything unique or special. I think the most unique thing would be the triangular shape. However, because it's over an acre in size, that's not really a limitation to an architect. There's other ways to design a building that fits within the FAR guidelines. Because we're trying to be really focused on meeting those, the city has decided in R1 zones that FAR really counts, and we all know that's true. It's all about the square footage. I don't see anything unique and special about this lot that would justify granting a variance, especially when it's a 25% increase. I'll segue for a second because it is effective. I think, quite conversely, on the ramp issue, the triangular shape is exactly what makes it unique and special. The only place logically to put the ramp is at one edge of the parking area, which makes it in the corner of the lot because it's a triangular lot. Hence, I think that variance is quite justified, but the FAR one is not. I'm left then thinking, okay, it's not really the architecture board's purview to focus on the variance. It's just not our job. But what I do think we can do is send a strong message to the Planning Commission, who will act on this thing, that this is not a justifiable variance in our opinion. All of that said, I think the building design itself does a very good job of making it fit within the community, making the extra square footage work. So I have to support the application as it's put in front of me. It's a handsome building, it's well designed, well thought. I can make all of the required findings, but I'm very uncomfortable with the variance being granted under these conditions. I just don't see it being justified, and I think it's a very large variance. So I would like us to at least make a real collective recommendation to the Planning Commission, which is within our purview. Then, I'd like to address what I call site planning and the parking questions. I think the parking is tight. There's going to be times when you impact the neighborhood. I think, however, the church has been there for a long time, and the parking has always been an issue, and I think the congregation is doing a commendable job of trying to meet that requirement, both in first steps, building an underground parking garage. That's a big deal, and I think they should be applauded for that. Secondly, I'm convinced that they're doing every method of outreach and community work to try to mitigate the impact a few times where they're going overflowing on it. So I think it's okay. I am concerned, though, that at least one thought I had, and this is now coming to a smaller architectural issue on site planning, but when you have an underground parking garage, it's always the least desirable place to park. First, you're going to come try to get the above-ground spots, and then you're going to try to drop people off. And what I'm seeing is a bit of a conflict here in that you have what I see is essentially two drop-off points. One is to go in and around a turnaround circle, and that's probably preferable, but it will clog up quickly on days when you have a lot of people coming. Then I see a curbside drop-off on the front where we can, maybe you could go back to that rendering, please, the Manuel Avenue rendering. I think that, the one with the children back too.
This one?
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the, no, please go back to the one that's the entrance between the sanctuary and the administrative building.
That is this.
It does not, the one with the sidewalk that does not meet the street.
Correct.
Just go right at the beginning. Back one. This picture right here. I don't understand this. The main, what would seem to be the main drop-off point and access for the whole facility, dead ends 10 feet before the road. I don't know anybody who's not going to just stop and help grandma across the grass. It seems to me that you're setting up a situation where rather than address it and say this is a drop-off point, it sort of is and it isn't. And it affects your site planning. One thought I had was if you could somehow make a greater visual and comfortable connection between the subterranean parking and the upper area. What you have now is a staircase. Yes, it's a little bit wider in the middle where you flip back, but if you made it big enough that you could actually see in, that you could sense that there's parking down there, you might find that then people are more comfortable even dropping off people, starting their visit to the congregation in the facility in the garage and not needing to drop people off. And it seems to me there's an opportunity to enhance the way you come up from the parking garage. I'm almost seeing, I guess to be blunt, a beautifully thought through design of the congregation and all that stuff, and the underground parking was taken as sort of some engineer designed all of that. And there's the only effort to integrate the two is this one staircase.
Yeah, we actually want to discourage people from dropping off on Manuela. That's not a spot that we want to drop off. The majority of the traffic will be coming from the Arrastadero Road side, and so therefore, in order for somebody to drop off at that area that you were talking about, that stops short of the street.
I find myself not convinced that you have, the site planning is sort of confusing on the entrances, and I think the underground parking, well, barely acceptable because it's all we can do, could be better integrated through some efforts below. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to change that, but, and part of that is because the building is quite big. You're covering a lot of the site. In any case, I don't know how to put that to the group here, but to me, there could be some other site planning that would enhance that. I would like to also address the use of the wood on the exterior. It's beautiful, it's lovely, the renderings are extremely evocative, it feels really nice, these samples are good. I don't know a piece of wood that lasts 50 years outdoors, and I share Alex's concern that it really is about how you finish it, and I think really you have to acknowledge that you cannot finish it. You can't really, there's no material made that can be protected for 50 years. There's no stain, there's no varnish. You need to design the wood to be weathering.
May I?
No, please. All of the renderings we're showing are beautifully stained, finished pieces of wood, which is lovely. But 2 years from now, it won't be that way. And I think because you have 200 feet of frontage with wood slats that's 15 feet tall, that's the face of the building. That's what everybody will see. And unless the congregation begins a every 3-year maintenance program, which means sanding, staining, revarnishing this wood, or the architect really gets into the skin of which woods you're choosing and why they think that will last a long time, you've made a mistake as a congregation and as an architect not to understand the weathering effect on the wood. The same thing happens with the large beams over the open space in between the sanctuary and the large open space, what I see is a series of exposed, probably glue laminated timbers. Again, those don't do well being exposed to the weather. You just need to somehow protect them or expect them to weather. Like a stave church in Norway, they cover it with creosote every few years, and that's what lets it last thousands of years. But the onus is even higher on a religious facility. We build these things to last for a long time. It's hard for the congregation. It's really hard for them to come up with continual maintenance. It's expensive. We need to design something that really is easily durable. So I think it could be done with the right choice of woods, but I would like to see a real effort put into explaining and convincing us in the congregation that that really is the right choice over time, not just really a pretty choice right now. Let me stop at that point. Leave it to Q.
Q?
Yeah, thank you for coming back to the board with your presentation. I really like the project. I think these are the kinds of designs and the kind of architecture that really gets me excited about architecture. Hopefully it gets the public excited about architecture as well. I appreciate the thought put into the design process and how you've carried that out and executed that. I think some of my original concerns are still there as far as the pedestrian circulation and having to cross the ramp driveway as well as the on-grade driveway to get into the main access is still there and still something that concerns me a little bit. I appreciate the renderings that you've done of the sanctuary and the multipurpose room, but I still don't feel that you've done the project justice because I think there are other areas and other opportunities to do some renderings that could really show off the grandeur of the building. You know, certain elements or certain places such as the roundabout drop-off, you know, what does that look like? I know that the elevations are there, but I don't think it does it justice to some of the canopy elements that you have along with the exposed beams. A couple of minor things, like the venting of the garage. I didn't see any on-grade vents or if there are any stacks that will allow the garage to ventilate. Where are those located? Have those been thought through? I also have some questions to the wood and how it's going to weather. I would imagine that you might find birds nesting between some of those elements. Has there been a test to see if the wood weathers there? On the site as it is there any moss buildup that's going to occur on the wood? As far as the variances go, I think Board Member Balte brings up a good point about the height issue. I'm not so hardline on the wording of when we should and should not grant that variance, and I think in this case that I would be okay with it. That's just from a personal standpoint. Some other thoughts that I have are, if they were to rezone the property somehow, that would actually eliminate any kind of a height issue with that 17 feet. I really think it's just because it's an R1 that it becomes an issue. As far as the driveway ramp and the variance for the ramp retaining walls, I'm okay with that as well. And I think we've actually approved other projects with similar circumstances where the retaining wall of the underground parking ramp is in a setback. My main concern is really the circulation of the site and the pedestrians. I would imagine that there are quite a few congregation members that prefer to walk on the Sabbath, and I'm just thinking, depending on which end they enter from, is it really safe for them to get into the main sanctuary space? The concern about that 3'6" dimension from the corner of the administrative building to the driveway was something that also caught my eye, as well as the main access that becomes tempting here to drop someone off at that main access right off of Manuela. Does that garden entrance have to extend further out and become a dead end, or could it perhaps just be brought to the sidewalk and end directly at the sidewalk? I also think the rendering shows the pedestrian walkway differently than the site plan. It looks like on the site plan, the sidewalk does a little bit of a jog and comes closer to the wood wall. And here you're showing quite a bit more landscaping in front of the multipurpose space. So at the garden entrance walkway, the sidewalk does that little jog, right?
It does.
Okay. To me, in the rendering, it didn't read that way, but it just could be my mistake. And I think the other comments that I have been addressed by the other board members, but overall, I'm very excited about the project. I think it's, even from the public standpoint, there hasn't been a concern about the building itself, and if there has been, it seems like it's been addressed. And I'm extremely appreciative of the effort that's been put forth by both the congregation and the designers to satisfy any concerns of the public. The parking concern that remains is something that I can't really speak to, but even parking on the street, as far as I know, it's a public street, so I can understand that perhaps people are frustrated, but the congregation and the synagogue has been there probably long before most of the residents that are complaining. So it's something that they should have expected, and it's not a change in condition. With the addition of perhaps self-driving cars in the next 10, 15 years, maybe the underground parking garage is actually almost a waste of space. But I think everything has been done to try to accommodate those concerns, and I think overall it's a very stunning project, and I look forward to it being approved. Just a quick last question for staff. This is the first formal review that we've done, right? The previous review was a preliminary review?
That's correct.
Okay. So maybe just in closing, I hope that everybody realizes that this is a process, and as much as I am impressed with the building, I still think there are some things that should probably come back, whether it's to the board as a whole or to subcommittee. And I look forward to approving the project at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, overall, I think it's a very nice project. I agree. There are some concerns that I have, which have also been expressed by my fellow board members. I don't really have an issue with the variance for the height, mainly because based on the fact that it's lower than the average two-story building or the two-story residence in the area there. So I don't really have an issue with that. I could see if it had some 45-degree slope with a roof that went up 40 feet, that I'd say it would make a real statement, and I'd have a problem with it. This is actually fairly low key. I do. Well, let's go to the variance as well. I'm on that. I don't really have a problem with the wall in the ramp. I mean, maybe we could have it where it becomes a little bit fancier or decorated, whatever. We could do some treatment to that. One of the big concerns I have is what I had the first go around is that, and it's been expressed here by others, is that the wall or the wood wall looks very unique and interesting at this point, but I have a fear that in 10 years, it's just going to look like a very funky high wood fence that is going to, like you said, there's no way you could stain that or whatever unless you replace the thing every 5 years, and I don't see that happening. So I still have a concern with the wall being, or I should say the wood wall being the way it is. Let's see, what else? I think probably most of the things have been discussed. At this point, I get the sense that we're all, or none of us really think it's ready to approve at this point. So I think probably it looks like we're gearing towards bringing it back one more time, but probably what we should do for the benefit of the applicant is to be very specific as to exactly what we want to address in this return presentation. So can I have some, or I mean, do people agree with me, or is someone ready to make a motion to approve it, or Okay, that's what I thought. So why don't you give me some, or throw out some ideas? One of them is, like you said, I think you mentioned the whole structure of the wall, but I think the whole wall in general, I think, is we want some more clarification as to, as you said, how is that going to last even 25 years and still have it look the way it does now?
Is there any way to get clarification on the variance for the second story FAR business before? It just so affects the design. If they have to change that much square footage, if the planning commission doesn't grant the variance, we're wasting our time.
It's the director, not the planning commission.
I do want to clarify that this project would be approved by the director of planning.
Not the planning.
That is the decision maker.
So the variance would be approved.
I'm just saying, it's the director's decision.
It doesn't go to the planning
It
commission.
doesn't need to go to the planning commission, that's what we're saying.
Is it possible to get that determination made before it comes back to us and keeps, the architects
The
work
director
hard?
is currently in support of that variance. And we, we're here to hear your comments, and the director will certainly take those into consideration as well. But I believe, given that the overall height of the building is 21 feet, I think, as Board Member Guyer said, it is, the massing of the building is smaller than a two-story house would be.
As long as the director's comfortable making the findings about the property being that unique, we have to respect that, and I do.
Yes.
And if it were a two-story house, both floors would be counted as square footage. This is a FAR variance, not a height variance.
Correct, this is an FAR variance.
Yeah, I'd like to be sure the record shows that we understand this as an FAR variance, not, there's been a lot of talk about a height variance. It's nothing to do with the height limit.
Right.
Because of the height of the structure, it is double counted towards FAR.
Is creating the FAR problem. Exactly.
Correct.
So it is somewhat of a height issue, but it's just in a roundabout way. It's we're all in agreement that the FAR is what's exceeding, not the height.
And I do want to clarify too that for single-family homes, they are certainly allowed to apply for variances for FAR. I don't know that the director would always be able to make the findings for such a variance, but we do have home improvement exceptions that allow single-family homes to be increased by 100 square feet, and that's, that would go through an HIE process.
That's only on remodels, not on new construction. This is a new building.
You're correct, that is on remodels.
Yeah, I think the city has made it very clear that they're very serious about FAR and FAR variances. And I just want to be on the record that we're acknowledging.
Okay, well, so we don't dwell on this too long. It's duly noted that, so, like I said, what other concerns do we have that we want to see addressed?
I'd like to see something that lets me know what this access to the underground garage actually looks like. And
Okay.
I'd like to see it looking as good and inviting as possible.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, yeah, just perhaps a slight rethinking of exactly how you get to the garage, how you drop people off. We've all made comments in that vein. I think they've heard us. But to do with the access to the garage, how it looks and how it functions.
Anything else?
Well, I just want to say, I do share your concern about the screen wall. I've certainly spent my time on committees dealing with falling apart rafters and post and beam construction in Pasadena that doesn't last.
Well, I think we're all in agreement.
I think
that the
it's a
wall needs-
big congregational and design issue that needs a serious plan before it should be
I
approved.
completely agree. I respect field architecture a lot, and I think they might be able to come up with a solution. They've done this kind of thing before. We should be open to hearing their proposal, but we've expressed that concern.
Right. Well, that's why I don't want to sit here and design it for them, but
Absolutely.
Like I said, we have concerns about those. I think, is that it then for?
Well, I guess I would like to know, while you're rethinking access and circulation a bit, I would like to know if there are spaces which could be used to accommodate more bicycle parking in the future than is shown now. In other words,
Okay.
if they've got that
Or at least
reserve
something to
space.
look at for them to make a proposal.
Or is this going to be it? I mean, is this all they can fit on?
Well, like I said, they meet the code requirement. If they feel that it, based on how some of the members here feel about parking, if they want to add that, that's something they can do, and then we make the judgment call one way or the other next time they show up.
Right.
So anything else? Okay, I think can I get a motion then from someone?
Move to continue to a date certain, if staff could give us
You want to
one?
do it certain or uncertain?
I'd prefer to leave it uncertain. I feel it
Whatever
every
works.
time when we put a fixed date.
How about the applicant? Would you prefer it certain or uncertain? That's pretty much, you know, if your staff can,
Let's set a date. I think we can address your concerns. We do have additional renderings that we might be able to provide to this group to show you some of the areas of the ramp and what that wood may do. In addition, we're working with a company to produce a mock-up of the wood wall, and we can probably have that done in a relatively short period of time.
so I'll leave that up to you. What's the schedule look like?
If we're looking for a date certain, unfortunately, I mean, we're looking at either March 17th is really the most likely, because plans for that would be due February 4th. So even that gives them limited time to turn around revised plans.
Okay, so you're saying first, March 17th, they'd need to have the plans in by February 4th, you said?
Correct.
Can you do that? That's awfully tight.
I really feel, guys, that we just force them to jam
Okay.
on something very quickly.
All right.
And I'd rather just let
Yeah.
them have enough time to
The
really
next
come up.
available hearing would be April 7th.
And what date would we need to submit the
So
documents?
what do you need, when do you,
That would be the end of February, we would need plans, so that gives them a month.
Okay. We will meet that.
okay. All right, we'll do it to a date
April
certain, then
7th.
April 7th.
Move continuance to April 7th, 2016.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Can you get that in a little bit? I want to just finish it up, and then you can grab that. Okay, are there any other items from agenda items, changes?
No, we just have subcommittee after this.
Right.
And then just the next meeting, will probably be a short meeting as well, just so you can plan your schedules. I tried to
Okay.
make it as best.
Okay, so
Maybe a quick announcement.
Sure.
From what I understand, today was Diana's last day with us, and she's moving across
That's
the
right.
street, so we can just, say thank you to Diana.
Thank her for the excellent work she's done. She's staying around in the city, though, but at just a different department. Okay. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.